Hello, welcome. Happy Monday, everybody. You listen, we're going to just go ahead and I'm trying to make sure that this is not just another Democrat bashing, but they're going to have to get some smoke. But welcome aboard this Monday. Here's just another, I guess, stream talking about the tragedy out in California. And and listen, it's still raging. Things are still going on. And even besides some of the finger pointing and stuff like that going on, it's an absolute tragedy. And we got to really pray for the folks out there. They're losing. What's going on, Curtis? What's happening? You know? Yeah, so I'm going to try to, just besides just talking about who's at fault, I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I think I haven't really seen talked about. I'm not going to dwell on it, but, we got fires raging and the land is right next to a big ocean. We're going to explore a little bit on why we can't use the seawater to at least mitigate some of the problems or prevent them from or minimizing them if we have the right kind of technology applied to utilize the ocean water, right? An endless amount of water right there with raging fires going on. So the question was asked, well, how come we can't use the ocean? Well, you can, but we got to talk about that a little bit. So we'll get to that. Right now it's kind of early, so we're gonna wait some folks to come in. And just like what I like to do, of course, I hate to do all the talking. And I have some videos on one article, and we're gonna go through some of that, and we're gonna talk about why California and Los Angeles is in the position they're in right now. The Democrats have to take the lion's share of the blame, even though the position that California is in is actually really bipartisan. I mean, the Republicans didn't do anything special to make sure that things like this wouldn't happen. But there hasn't been a Republican governor in California since 2011. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the last one. So Gavin Newsom has to eat what's going on. Jerry Brown before Gavin Newsom. They gotta eat what's going on. You can't avoid it, right? So it's really what you focus on. That's the kind of thing. It's what are you focusing on? So I just it's a travesty, and I just said, well, let me go ahead and talk a little bit about it. There's some great content creators out there who've talked about this situation, and I want to get a little bit of it off my chest, just like anybody else. So bear with me, follow through, and if you have some questions, I'll drop the link and things of that nature. But let's just get started. I mean, of course, there's nothing like visuals. And so I'm going to have put some visuals up and talk through the visuals as we go. Okay, so here we go, right? We're going to talk through some of these visuals. The bottom line is, it is, when they say climate change, sometimes I think people just throwing it out there and say, the climate is always changing somewhat. The Santa Ana winds have been blowing for years. I've been out in California at times when Santa Ana was blowing. I went out to Los Angeles several times when the horizon was on fire. And it's a sight to see from a plane going in for a landing. And you look out the window and you see in the horizon just fire all across the landscape and smoke coming out. Now, those fires weren't as bad as this one, but every fire causes some kind of damage. And, so we can't, it's like unavoidable. So the fires are unavoidable. The point is they're unavoidable. They're not predictable as how bad they're going to be, but you do know that the fires are going to happen. Almost every year we're talking about fires out in California. So here's a helicopter dropping some water on the fire. Of course, when you look at it, you can say, wow, man, like too little, too late. But the reason why I'm showing this particular picture is that's seawater. They actually have plane flights going over when the winds aren't too bad, dropping seawater. So uh, in this emergency situation, they're not as worried about eco-friendly water. Uh, they load up whatever tanks they have, and they use the seawater at that bay. But we're going to come back to why couldn't we have desalination plants ready for all the water we need? And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. All right, so it looks like a church or whatever. I'm trying to figure out why this guy is still in the danger zone. I mean, he could have been surrounded by this fire if he wasn't careful. Just looks like maybe a church or something like that on fire. It's an ominous sight to see. It's crazy. It's like the fire's alive. Here's another one. This looks like something out of a horror movie. There's some debris that's left over. And one of the things, like I said, it says that the Democrats mismanaged this thing. The truth of the matter is, uh, they're going to take the brunt of the blame, like I said, because they are in charge at every level. In California, the Democrats have a super majority, right? Whatever the Republicans or conservatives want, the Democrats tell them, get bent. They don't even have enough votes to even hold up anything in legislation. I think the only recourse Californians have is that they have the recall ability. I think at one point, I think they tried to recall Gavin Newsom. I think it fell through. I didn't check that, but I believe they did. So they recalled the mayor of Oakland. So they have that. They actually had a prop to get rid of that. You could steal $1,000 worth of stuff without reprisal. So every so often, when they get pissed enough, the people of California have an opportunity to speak for themselves without going through without going through the people they elect, because sometimes the people they elect are just idiots. And unfortunately, the Democrats in this case are the idiots of the day. Some more devastation. I mean, I just can't imagine just going out your front door and looking at that in your backyard, coming over the hill. It's got to be surreal. Uh, I was even wondering whether this was a real picture with this bridge. I mean, they got to look at where that fire is on the side of the bridge. They got to look at all the support structures and whether this bridge is even safe to drive over after that fire is raging. It might not get hot enough to warp the bridge, but the sustained heat is not going to be good. Okay. And here's another thing I wanted to say about this. Everybody who lives in this California region, they're not the multimillionaires, right? In this neighborhood, I would imagine is a whole bunch of millionaires next door and probably decently upper middle class people or people who can afford to live there or living check to check at their level. The thing about looking at before and after here, wealth is the way you measure wealth. Part of it is the equity you have in your home, right? So a lot of these people, all their wealth is in their homes. It's not like they have a whole bunch of cash laying around. Uh, they're going to have a lot of trouble with the insurance companies. There's probably a lot of people who are probably on the margin or upside down in their mortgage already. And so it's the devastation is like this. I think this is kind of just like Maui, right? All the people who lived in that little section of Maui got wiped out. The death toll was unimaginable there. And I mean, if you're a conspiracy theorist, the unpreparedness in both Maui and here in LA would have you think, is there somebody trying to clear the land so they could come in cheap and buy it later on? I mean, That's what I'm thinking, right? I mean, it's a conspiracy theory. You can't prove it right off the bat, but who knows? I mean, it's just a travesty all the way around. So I'm just looking at the possibilities that I hate to say it was planned, but there's a couple of things going on that you say, well, why weren't they prepared at some point? The Santa Ana winds come every year. They have fires every year. Why weren't they more prepared? And one of the reasons why they're not prepared because they use money to do shit like you know social programs, feel good stuff, all that kind of stuff. And we'll get into a little bit of that later on. I'm just, it just goes on. It just like never stops. The mismanagement of American taxpayers' dollars. There's no end. And this is just a microcosm because in a macro level, that's what the government does with our taxpayers' money on the federal level, right? If we had a poll, I would imagine anywhere from 80 to 90% of the people wouldn't want our money to be going over to foreign actors for war and for death and destruction and stuff like that. Billions and billions of dollars. And then when we need the government says, well, go to this website and maybe we'll give you $750. So I don't know how long that's going to keep up. All right, so here's a fire tornado. There were several of these, the winds, the pressure, all the things that go into building a tornado, just more destruction. More aftermath. Again, another helicopter. It just looks like, you could drop. I mean, how much water can you really drop to make a difference from a helicopter? You know what I'm saying? Or chemicals or that kind of stuff. Is you got to do it, but is it really effective? Probably not. All right, so let's get back to the brass tacks. How come there wasn't water at the ready out of this reservoir? They said this reservoir holds a capacity of 117, 118 million gallons of water, and it's in disrepair, right? It's closed down for repair, and the point is that they said that the lady who's in charge knows. I mean, everybody knows California, right? It's not like they don't know what's going on. And the lady who's in charge, her name is Janice Quinones. She makes $750,000 a year, and she was put in place and hired as the LAPD water and power, organization. She's the CEO. $750,000 a year. Oversaw closing down this thing for repair and didn't have it ready and has no plans to have it ready anytime soon to be able to have water for those hydrants. This is where they would suck the water from. It's bone dry. Bone dry. The Santa Ana winds is coming up. You got a year, every year you got a year to prepare for the next one. And it's not, they didn't do anything about it. I don't understand how there's outrage now. But when everything is going good, people just forget that, you put people in place to be stewards over you in these positions for mayor on down. And you think they have your back. But when the shit hits the fan, you find out that most of these guys are just bullshit, right? The mayor's over in Africa. What is she doing over there? Now listen, now you're not, she doesn't have an ankle bracelet on, but the point is she knew this was coming up. She knows every time the Santa Ana winds blows, there's going to be some tinder in the underbrush somewhere that's going to catch fire. So she can't predict how bad the fires will be, but she knows the fire is coming. It comes every single year. And this time, was the fire of all fires. And she's over there being celebrated, as the American Black Queen in Africa. For some stupid inauguration that some kind of African ambassador should have been over there representing America, not the mayor of LA. And even she was there, I'll give her credit. They say she rushed back, but I don't know how true that is either. But I believe she took some military planes back and stuff like that. So once she knew that this was disaster brewing, she got out of there. So I don't know how long she was planning on staying. But getting back to the lady who's in charge of this. So here you go again. There's one lady probably putting another lady in charge of an organization that's probably full of men. Same thing with the fire chief, and we'll get to that sooner or later. Are these people qualified? Maybe not, but there's a big taint on when you put people in charge and disaster strikes, and it looks like they've made bad choices, right? And you sit back and you scratch your head and say, well, if we had somebody more qualified or somebody who's looking out for the people other than their big salary, maybe things would be different. So that's hindsight. Is it a little unfair? Maybe. But when disaster strikes, you got to take that smoke, right? I mean, I don't see how you could avoid it, right? So I got something else to show you guys. So it's not like they haven't been talking about using seawater to hey, hello, let me stop for a second and just say hello. Hey, Trey, what's going on, man? Yeah, hey, Trey, Curtis is there, Milani, hello. And like I said, it's unfair to just say just because you're a woman, but even if you're a man, when disaster strikes, everybody's going to come at you. You got to have the shoulders to take it, right? There is no excuse for this reservoir to be empty. It's just not, And and well, the lady, I haven't heard the CEO speak yet. I'm sure somebody's going to try to come up with some kind of bullshit explanation on why they couldn't have this fixed and repaired and filled by the time the Santa Ana winds came. We know it's coming every year. So if there was a priority for this reservoir, being fixed and full should have been the first priority, as opposed to whatever the hell else she was doing. So anyway, so let me go ahead and get to this article that I have. And it's kind of funny because I just found this kind of just looking around, talking about how come there's not enough water there. And we're going to hit a little bit. How come they're not prepared? And we got 1,000 miles of ocean line and an endless source of water to be able to use if you desalinate it, right? And desalination is not some heavy technology. And there's private companies that want to be able to clean the water up, separate the salt and other mineral water, and have the water ready for things like fires, anything up to and including being able to drink it. Right? So it costs money to get that done, but it doesn't have to be. So some of the criticism is they don't want private enterprises to own the water rights. Well, the government could have a government-owned operation and have contractors run it, and it can still be under government hands. So I read this article. When they say handouts, it's really an investment. Okay, let me see if everybody can see this. Okay, everybody can see this. Let me do this a little bit. I mean, I know y'all have to try to read it. I'm gonna just skip through. No, that's not good. I'm gonna just skip through a lot of it anyway. So I'm just gonna read a little bit of it for you. So again, so here we start. You got the drought in California. So is desalination an answer for the problems? Well, all the bureaucrats enough that make decisions say no. They say there's so many other options they could use to get water to the people that this one is not on the top of the list. You could conserve, you could recycle, You could do some other things, right? That that are not as costly. That's what they're saying. Well, people don't conserve. That's one thing. And this recycling thing, they're not recycling water to drink. Okay, so what's the next thing? All right, so but not all desalination plants are created equal. Okay, so some are better than others. They want to put one in Huntington Beach, California, which is not too far from LA. But anyway, so this Poseidon company, a lot of people don't like this company because it's a Canadian company. And essentially they wanted $1 billion to be able to $1.1 billion to be able to produce 100 million gallons of water a day, right? So they can use whatever techniques to separate the salt and minerals out of the water to make it useful, okay, for putting out fires without hurting the ecosystem, or even useful for drinking when there's droughts, maybe even irrigating the land, all that kind of stuff. Hey, what's going on, Ebony? Well, anyway, um, there's a lot of opposition to them. So I'm gonna just go down a little bit. This Susan Jordan, she belongs to this. She's in charge of this California Coastal Protection Network, which is under the California Coastal Commission. They're like the watchdog group. And the California Coastal Commission is the same commission that doesn't want Elon Musk to launch his satellites from California because he's a Republican. And the lady came out and said that she didn't like his politics of supporting Trump, so she wasn't going to give him his permits. And he's going to move that whole plant, that whole thing out of California at some point, unless somebody with some balls can override this lady. So of course, these people don't want the plant either, right? Because 25% of the budget they get would go for operating this plant, but they'd rather have that money for things like the catastrophic housing crisis. And the housing crisis has gotten worse since 2019 or 2021. It didn't get better. So they're still not using the money properly. Okay. So let me just go back to the 1.1 billion. If I told you you had to invest $1.1, and you can get 275 times your money, would you take that deal for every dollar you put in? I think you would say yes, because right now that California fire is up to $275 billion. So the 1.1 billion to build this plant would have been able to maybe cut that in half or more, right? So would that be a great return on investment? I think so. I think so. And so the article goes on and on and on. But there's one part of this that I want to get to that says, where is it? COVID-19. There is, I'm going to just skip to here. The boondoggle. There's a group. Shoot, I got to find it. Let me find it. There's one part in there that I think is really worthwhile talking about. Well, there's one part where they said they didn't want this because they're worried about microorganisms and stuff like that would get hurt by using this water. And then there's another part in this thing by the folks from Section Network. I can't find the damn thing. I should have had it marked. I thought I had it marked. There was a what's the name of this? There was the Santa Ana Authority liked this idea because of the potential of fires and having this water ready. And they were proponents for building this plant. And of course, they got shot down by Gavin Newsom and people like that. So it's one of those kind of things that, something that would have been beneficial to the people, was turned down because they didn't want to invest the money in the builders in building these plants because they couldn't see the benefits of it, or it would cut into their budget. Now, the California budget in general It's close to $300 billion. It's close to $300 billion. So, I mean, I would imagine this is a tragedy that might make them rethink all of the shit that they've done up to now, right? So they had to wait for the car to run the stop sign or the stoplight to actually look at the decisions that they're making. So it's just bad all the way around. So let's get rid of that for right now. And I just want to move into the president, right? Oh no, about water and private enterprise. I found this clip that I thought I'd share with you about the billionaires in California who own water rights and how they how, how they're just bilking the taxpayers out of what's rightfully theirs. So bear with me. This is a little long. I'll stop and start it. If you have some questions, I'll just put it in the chat.
While 40 million Californians suffer through unprecedented drought, one billionaire couple owns a massive share of the state's water system, seized in a series of secretive meetings 2 decades ago. That system was largely paid for by the very taxpayers whose water these billionaires hold hostage. Urban water systems are desperate for water, but in 2023, they'll receive just 5% of what they requested from the state. The Resnicks are the biggest farmers in California. As of 2007, they owned 4 San Francisco's worth of farmland, and nearly half of Americans buy at least one of their products: their pistachios, their pomegranate juice, their mandarins, their flowers. It's all under one massive umbrella, the Wonderful Company, a privately owned company worth at least $5 billion. The majority owners, the Resnicks, are worth at least $8 billion. How were they able to take over such a large percentage of what should be a shared public resource? This is The Classroom from More Perfect Union, and today we're looking at how the Resnicks got rich. Linda is a former child actress, the daughter of Jack Harris, a successful movie distributor of the 1950s, most well known for The Blob.
Starring Steve McQueen and a cast of exciting young people.
At 19, she founded her own advertising agency. Stewart was born to a middle-class New Jersey family and started his first business, a janitorial service, in grad school. He eventually acquired American Protection Services, a burglar alarm and security company. Linda approached him about marketing services for the company, and they hit it off, not knowing that one day they'd work together to take over California's water. The Lovebirds became business partners. They bought Teleflora, the flower delivery company, and the Franklin Mint, purveyors of inane little tchotchkes. Linda was the marketing person, and Stewart was in charge of business. As Linda told the LA Times in 1993,
well, we all recognize some of these products they're talking about. I certainly do. Pistachios, palm juice, the Franklin Mint, flowers. I didn't know about the companies behind it.
I've always said that Stewart and I together make one perfect person, like little salt and pepper shakers. In the late 80s, they found their primary industry, agriculture. They got into the pistachio business. Linda said, "We've done more for the pistachio than anyone ever since it was planted in the Garden of Eden. My husband should be canonized for all the work he's done." They started branching into other products: almonds, pomegranates, citrus, wine, and acquiring more and more land to cover it, including some very important land in Kern County, which granted them water rights in the area. As the Resnicks were building their empire, the state of California was building new water infrastructure with taxpayer money. California's natural water supply is very inconsistent. Vastly differing amounts of rainfall means the state can go from surplus to drought and back very easily. So they build water banks to store water during surpluses to have during droughts. One important storage facility is the Kern Water Bank, started in 1988. The facility was built with hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars, which could have been a good thing. The people of California would have owned the water. But there were 2 Californians thirstier than the rest, and they wanted more water: Linda and Stewart Resnick, and they had a lot of political power. We'll get to that. In 1994, state water officials, water infrastructure contractors, and agricultural landowners with water rights arranged a secretive meeting at a resort in Monterey Bay, California. These groups, a mix of private companies and public agencies, rewrote California's water rules without any input from voters, taxpayers, or legislators. The new rules, called the Monterey Plus Agreement or the Monterey Amendments, were devastating for working Californians, and great for agriculture billionaires. The original code included urban preference, a long-standing rule that in times of drought, the state water board would give urban areas, where people live, access to water supplies before agricultural interests. Monterey axed that. That means that in times of drought, the water systems for normal Californians would have to buy water from private companies because they weren't getting it from the state. The new agreement also loosened regulations on paper water. That's water that doesn't necessarily exist anywhere but on paper. The full quantities of water that providers could have, but don't actually need to have.
I wanted to say that that agreement was signed, and I think he mentioned 1994. There was a Republican governor at the time. Uh, Whether he knew about what was going on or not, whether he, turned a blind eye. If he didn't know, he was an idiot and a fool and not minding the store. If he did know, he was complicit. And but let's go.
Today, 5 times as much water has been promised and sold as actually exists. And importantly, the meeting changed ownership of the Kern Water Bank. What once belonged to the state was transferred to a few private water contractors, one of which was Westside Mutual, a wholly owned subsidiary of Wonderful Foods. The wonderful employee who runs Westside, Bill Phillimore, is the chairman of the public organization that manages the Kern Water Bank. Boom. One secret meeting, and the Resnicks owned nearly 60% of an important California water resource, built with hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer money. The new ownership, combined with the rules on paper and surplus water, meant that during times of drought, the Resnicks could sell Kern water back to the state water systems. They took Californian taxpayers' water and sold it back to them, both literally as the water supply and also to grow expensive food like gourmet pistachios and pomegranate juice. They converted the people's water into products many can't afford. And that's just one water bank. The Resnicks also have control of other water boards and have been sued for directing more water towards their properties. So how do they get away with this Chinatown-level chicanery?
Gonna be a lot of irate citizens when they find out that they're paying for water that they're not gonna get.
With philanthropy. The Resnicks donate millions of dollars to politicians and research institutions, which help them secure control over water systems, and even get more water and more taxpayer funding. One important project is the proposed California Delta Tunnel, a taxpayer-funded project which would send water from Northern California to Central, where the Resnicks farms are. They've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on state and federal legislation and politicians who support the tunnel project. But their favorite politician is Senator Dianne Feinstein.
You come in here and you say it has to be my way or the highway.
Chair of the Energy
She's a Democrat.
and Water Subcommittee. She's a close personal friend of the Resnicks, attending their holiday parties in Aspen and maintaining their financial interests. A quick look through the bills she's sponsored shows several which would direct money to Kern-adjacent water projects. The Resnicks even ask her for things directly. When a pesky study about endangering salmon and shad fisheries threatened the Delta Tunnel, Stewart wrote a letter to Feinstein demanding a new study. She immediately forwarded it to the Obama administration, who agreed to spend $750,000 on a new study. It returned the same results as the first one. Can't buy science. But the Resnicks have tried. They are among the top donors to the University of California system, with their donations focusing on agricultural and ecological studies. The Resnicks have basically bought entire departments who put out studies on how water systems should be managed and where funding should go. That leads to even more federal and state taxpayer dollars being used to fix up what the Resnicks profit off of. This is all bad for California, even in a capitalistic sense. Agriculture uses 80% of California's water, but only represents 2% of its GDP.
All right, so let's stop it right there for a second. Listen to that. I mean, 80% of the water, growing, like I can see, no, I can't even see, but if some of that money, right, was really coming back to assuage some of the tax burdens of the people of California, that's one thing. But the percentage, that 80% is going to make profit to the billionaires, right? And then the 2%, then the rest of the people will have to live off the scraps because they want to make sure they take care of the farms and the people making money first when the water is short. And then when it's ever left over, the sludge that's left over is the shit that comes out of your faucet. And, oh my God.
The Resnicks' water monopoly is just one way their quest for wealth hurts the rest of us. They allegedly lobby for increased tensions with Iran to keep embargoes on superior Iranian pistachios. Their giant crops lead to monocultures which kill important pollinators. They siphon taxpayer dollars into the company town charter schools they own, set up to train children to work for their farms. And of course, like any company of this size, they exploit their workers. We need to treat water for what it is: a necessary public resource, a human right, and something that shouldn't be owned by anyone, and work towards legislative change that stops people like the Resnicks from stealing it. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll be covering the stories of other.
All right, so let me stop. So again, so we're just being grifted, man. You know, shit. You know, and you sit back and you say sometimes the fix is in, right? I mean, of course, I had my epiphany about getting off the Democrat plantation, but all the citizens of the United States, somewhat, we're all on the plantation. To the politicians that we put in office, and it seems that as soon as they get in there, they forget who put them in office. You know, it's kind of strange. Nobody asked the question how you can go in as a public servant, making government money, and then when you retire, you're a multi-millionaire. You know, and it goes for almost all of them. You know, best healthcare, everything. So like we're just being grifted, like and you wonder why people want to stay in these positions for life, right? They got guys wanting to die in office, and so it's not really that far-fetched to see why California is upside down, depending on the politics of the people they put in charge. So now that the Democrats are in charge, they think about things differently than maybe the Republicans, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the people will benefit either way, right? We got to be fair about that. So, like Trump is on the clock, right? Starting Tuesday, well, really Monday is the change of ceremony, but starting the first day on Tuesday, he's on the clock. You got to show us that the way you govern is going to be better than the way the Democrats govern, right? Even though you govern differently, how much of that is going to fall off the table where the people benefit? We know that he wants to continue the tax breaks that he gave for the rich. You know, that has a mixed bag depending on how you look at it. But I think during his term, I think a lot of people said they benefited from him, whether they were rich or not. We know what the Democrats emphasize, right? Open borders, you know, transgenderism. We know they want to take rights away from parents in terms of being in control of their kids. We understood that they decriminalized stealing, which has made certain neighborhoods, especially in the Black communities, into food deserts, because Walmart and Walgreens and a lot of businesses said, you know what, hell with this shit. We're just closing our stores and we're moving on, right? Because nobody wants to punish criminals, right? So they had a title this last election that says, you know what, hell with that shit. You know, if you steal, we want to put them people in jail. So they overthrew that stupid, you know, I guess ordinance that said you could steal $1,000 worth of shit or $999 worth of shit, and nobody's going to say anything to you but a desk warrant or a desk certificate or some horse shit like that. So now it's a felony. And it should have always been a penalty for that. It should have never went away. That's the kind of shit that Democrats do. So, you know, they're the kind of people who are they're fiddling while Rome is burning. And so this whole thing about Democrats, DEI, and cities burning, well, burning is a metaphor because everywhere where Democrats are in charge, the cities are burning. Everywhere. It's just literally burning in California. So so I'm going to go from kind of top down. We're going to hear a little bit about Trump getting ready to take office and what he said about what's going on in California 6 years ago. All right. And what his concerns were for California 6 years ago. That was even before, I think, Gavin Newsom's term. And so we're going to end this and just go ahead and let him speak for a minute or two about what he thought, you know, was Trump. All right.
happened. You've talked about the forest fires. Now we're happened. You've talked about the forest fires. Now we're permitting and cleaning up these forests so it will reduce the threat of forest fire as well as creating jobs in these communities. We're all
to do that in
This was 6 years ago. 6 years ago.
California. By the
yes,
way.
sir.
California's a mess. We're giving billions and billions of dollars for forest fires in California. There's no reason for those fires to be like they are. They're leaving them dirty. It's a disgraceful thing. Old trees are sitting there rotting and dry. And instead of cleaning it up, they don't touch them. They leave them. And we end up with these massive fires that we're paying hundreds of billions of dollars for to fix. And the destruction is incredible. So I think California ought to get their act together and clean up their forests and manage their forests because it's disgraceful. What's happening should never happen. I go all over the country and I meet with governors. The first thing they say is there's no reason for forest fires like that in California. So I say to the governor or whoever's going to be the governor of California, you better get your act together because California, we're just not going to continue to pay the kind of money that we're paying because of fires that should never be to the extent. They were telling me in a couple of states, I won't even mention their name, it's like a flash. Some grass will burn. It'll be over in minutes. They'll lose 2 acres, 3 acres at the most. They won't even lose that. And here we are with thousands of acres and billions of dollars every year. It's the same thing every year. And they don't want to clean up their forests because they have environmental problems in cleaning it up. It should be the opposite because you're going to lose your forests. You're losing them. But it's costing our country hundreds of billions of dollars because of incompetence in California. So the people, I'm speaking now for the people of California, they don't want to see this happen. They're getting destroyed. And it's hurting our budgets. It's hurting our country. And they just better get their act together. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Director will.
All right. So what else is there to say about that? Right. I mean, he's right on. I just got another real clip of him talking about, the water. Not only, and this is more recent, you might have heard him talk about this one. But this one is more recent, and this just might as well play it.
Water down here. And the reason you have no water, you have the canals. The reason you have no water is because Gavin Newsom didn't want to do it. I had it all done. I had the Department of Commerce at the time. Believe it or not, they're the ones that rule on this particular issue. So you have millions of gallons of water pouring down from the north with the snow caps in Canada and all pouring down. And they have essentially a very large faucet. And you turn the faucet, and it takes 1 day to turn it. It's massive. It's as big as the wall of that building right there behind you. And you turn that, and all of that water goes aimlessly into the Pacific. And if they turned it back, all of that water would come right down here and right into Los Angeles. And you'd stop many of these horrible fires that are costing billions and billions of dollars by the federal government, et cetera. So one thing I'm going to do for California, vote for me, California. I'm going to give you safety. I'm going to give you a great border. And I'm going to give you more water than almost anybody has.
And again, now people try to fact check him on that, but he's absolutely correct, right? They fact checked him. The water comes down from the north and they just throw it out into the sea because they're worrying about a smell. I mean, how can that be? I mean, now this is under Gavin Newsom. And, for the life of me, the president calls him Gavin Newscum. And he calls him that all the time. I think that, if I was Gavin, I'd say, you call me that one more time, I'm going to come kick your ass, man. But that's what he calls him, and that's how they spell it. But, that's neither here nor there. I don't know how they're going to, end up shaking hands after that shit. Anyway, so you get the picture. So we have the president who's coming in now, and he's selling a lot of wolf tickets. Now, he only has a certain amount of power, and it's the power of the dollars, of making California reprioritize what they do with the budget that they have. So the budget for California this year is upwards of $325 billion. And again, a lot of that money is going to, get burnt up in, excuse the pun. It's going to, they're going to have to allocate that money. So, but they're going to look for federal relief and insurance company release to do something about these fires. But, everybody's not going to be made whole. It's just impossible for that shit to happen. So I think of some people who are sitting in the background looking at an opportunity to swoop in and get a whole lot of that land cheap, relatively speaking, because the people who live there will never be able to go back home because of the incompetence of the people who run the place. So I got this. The next thing I wanted to show was, again, the LA mayor, the governor, the mayor. I have this. It's funny, the Australian news, Sky News, they cover the United States pretty much better than our own news people. And I'm just going to play that because it kind of gives you a little bit of Gavin Newsom, a little bit of Karen Bass, a little bit of some of the things that they've done to put us in this position that we're in. So it's like a 10-minute clip, and I'll stop it in between. I don't know if anybody wants to come up, just give me a high sign. I'll just drop the link. I might just drop it anyway. But the bottom line is, it's almost nothing to really discuss, but just to go through the daisy chain of events that got us here that could have been prevented if we had the right kind of leadership focusing on the right kind of things in California. And it's not going to get any better, right? Because when they talk about they want to prioritize like stuff like homeless, they're not doing that. The homeless situation has gotten much worse in all the major cities. The crime we know has gotten worse. And so where the people had to speak up and change the law themselves, they cut the budget of the fire department in LA by 17 million, which doesn't sound like a lot in the backdrop of what's going on, but it might have been enough to keep some of the equipment working. They fired a lot of the firemen during COVID because they refused to get vaxxed. I don't know if they were forced to make those people whole. I think the Supreme Court kind of shot down that as unconstitutional. I don't know if those people came back or not. And of course they have the DEI hiring, right? There's 3,500 firemen, 114 of them are women. And out of the 4%, the 3 to 4% of the women, they told those 96% of the fire force, the fraternity, the fraternal order of firemen, that the woman in the 4% group is better to be commissioned in than all of you stupid hard legs, which is like, to me, a statistical improbability that all of these guys are idiots and the best person for the job was out of the 4% group. I don't buy that shit for 1 second. And so I can imagine they respect the position, but being passed over for chief because somebody's trying to fulfill some kind of quota or DEI shit is probably demoralizing. Anyway, so let me go ahead and play this next clip. And all right, not that one. This one.
Through the worst fires in its history. At least 24 people have tragically been killed. More than 150,000 have been forced to flee their homes. 10,000 structures have been completely destroyed, including some of the country's most expensive real estate. And when the fires broke out, LA Mayor Karen Bass was in Africa. And when she returned, instead of answering critical questions from reporters, she chose to just ignore those questions and stay silent.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster?
I gotta say, right? It's embarrassing to see this sister like that. But you're the mayor, you gotta have a little tough shoulder. The other sister want to come in. I gotta admit, if I was there, I'd probably be being trolled on YouTube as a simp. I couldn't see the guy talking to, because she's diminutive too. I probably would have said something to him the way he's talking to her, even though she deserves it. Because it even hurts me looking at the sister, because I got daughters and shit like that. I don't know, man. Trey, you gotta say something so you can bring me back to reality. But if I was standing there, it would have been really hard for me to just be silent.
No apology for them? Do you think you should have been visiting Ghana while this was unfolding back home?
Karen Bass had a choice in that moment. Instead of fronting up and showing leadership, she ran away. Who else would like to know why she approved an $18 million budget cut for the LA Fire Department, why a major reservoir which holds 117 million gallons of water has been sitting empty for almost a year, which meant that smaller tanks.
Well, before we go further, okay, fellas in the chat, I mean, could y'all have stood there if y'all, even if y'all weren't Karen Bass fans, could y'all have stood there and just hear this guy talk to her like that without, I mean, could you? I don't know if I could have. I mean, even though, like I said, she deserves this and not being prepared to even just say, listen, man, get out of my face. I'm gonna have a full press conference when I sit down, get it situated. It's a shame. I pray for the family, something. But it would have been hard for me to just stand there. I have to admit it. I got to admit that. It just would have. Anyway, and I'm not for the protect all black women shit either, but I would have been feeling some kind of way.
Tanks were quickly exhausted and fire hydrants were running dry as firefighters risked their lives trying to save homes. And why did Karen Bass have nothing to say as the people of Los Angeles were going through the most horrifying experience that was made worse because of the government's mismanagement? Well, after ignoring reporters and showing no leadership at the start of this crisis, Karen Bass has posted a bizarre video where she appears slightly upbeat and even smiling as she tells the people of LA that she's seen the devastation.
Angelenos, we're still going through it. And to any of you and all of you that have experienced a loss, the grief, the anger, the just utter shock, I've seen the devastation. It is unbelievable the amount of loss that people have experienced. But we have to get through this crisis, and I know that we will. I was at the Sylmar command post today, and I saw the work of our first responders and how they've been able to defeat the fires in certain areas. We know we still have much more to go, and we know the winds are going to kick up again. But we got to stick together. We got to stand strong. And then we have to rebuild our city. We're the nation's second largest city, one of the greatest cities in the world. And
is that helpful? The people of LA don't need to be told that she's seen the devastation. They're all experiencing the heartbreak and devastation for themselves. They also don't need to be told that LA is the nation's second largest city. They need answers, they need leadership, and they need to know why decisions were made that meant that LA was not prepared to fight these fires. Well, there are calls for Karen Bass to resign, and those calls are getting louder. Almost 100,000 people have signed a change.org petition demanding that she steps down due to the gross mismanagement of the fires. And Karen Bass isn't the only one facing calls to resign. President-elect Donald Trump is calling on the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, to stand down. Writing on Truth Social, Governor Gavin Newsom refused to sign the water restoration declaration put before him. He wanted to protect an essentially worthless fish called a smelt by giving it less water, but didn't care about the people of California. Now, the ultimate price is being paid. Now, Trump has been criticising Newsom's forest management for years. Back in 2019, he wrote, "I told him from the first day we met that he must clean his forest floors regardless of his bosses, the environmentalists, demand of him. They must also do burns." Trump warned Newsom to, quote, "get his act together" and to open the closed water lanes coming down from the north. But Gavin Newsom now claims that he doesn't know what Trump is talking about, and he also...
Yeah, see, I saw this video. I was going to play this particular video of this lady running up on him. And he's telling her right now that he's on the phone with the president talking to him. Of course, the president's not on the phone. And the lady says, well, I don't believe you. I want to see it, but I want to see you talk to him myself. And she just happened to be not trolling, but strolling around the neighborhood in her own car. And the whole camera crew is seeing, well, the camera crew is probably close to her. Wherever his bodyguards are, she said, hey, listen, I'm not going to hurt him. Let me talk to him. So this exchange, if you can find this particular exchange to see how this went, it's on the internet somewhere. But he was really taken aback by her charging him up right on the spot. And he wasn't prepared to give her any kind of answers. Of course, there's no real answers to give.
Tries to claim that all of the reservoirs in California are full. Just look at this spin.
I don't know what he's referring to when he talks about the Delta smelt and reservoirs. The reservoirs are completely full. The state reservoirs here in Southern California. That mis and disinformation, I don't think advantages or aids any of us. Responding to Donald Trump's insults, we would spend another month. I'm very familiar with them. Every elected official that he disagrees with, very familiar with them.
We do know, though, from reporting here locally that one reservoir that serves the Palisades was not full.
And that's exactly what triggered my desire to get the investigation to understand what was happening with that local reservoir.
Gavin Newsom is trying to do his own PR, claiming that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and posted on X a link for people to get the facts about the fires. Now that takes you to gavinnewsom.com/California Fire Facts, which also directs people to donate to the California Fire Foundation. But that link that's on the top right-hand corner doesn't take you to the California Fire Foundation. If you click on it, what it actually takes you to is actblue.com/donate/CFDEM LA Fire 2025. Act Blue is a fundraising platform for the Democrat Party. On that link, it shows Newsom's campaign for democracy and informs donors that they'll be signed up for text updates from the Political Action Committee. Professor Joseph Siracusa says that Gavin Newsom can kiss the White House goodbye.
Oh, he's gone. He can kiss the White House goodbye. This is a political disaster. Americans expect their governors and their mayors and their police chiefs and fire chiefs to get a handle on this, and they were poorly prepared for this. And keep in mind, there are, I think, 7 major water facilities that were supposed to be built, but they couldn't meet the ecosystems criteria as a result of Newsom's pushing on this angle here. So.
It's funny that he mentioned the fact that it takes a king's ransom and dog years to do anything in California. That is, they wanted to have a high-speed rail. They put billions in it already. Got nothing. Bill Maher, whether you like him or not, he did an expose about just trying to build a shed on his property. It took him over 3 years to get through all of the checks and all of the inspections before they allowed him to finish his shed. 3 years on his property. 3 years. And he was chronicling that on his show. Every so often he would give an update. And, and every time there was an inspector, it was a new one who didn't like what the old one did and said, well, whatever he told you was wrong because they just changed the code over here. And there's just no way you could really do business in California the way it's set up. And one of the things that was said, and I heard this somewhere, is that a lot of these people, especially the ultra rich, they're really the cornerstone of the tax base. If they decide to say, you know what, I had enough of California, it's beautiful, but I'll find some beautiful place elsewhere, and leave and take their money with them, you know, their tax base is going to be severely impacted. So anyway.
He's going to have to bear the burden here. And I do not think Kamala Harris is going to rush in to replace his job, because there's a lot of people there who are angry, and with good reason.
You mentioned Kamala Harris, right? Okay, like I said, the city's burning is a metaphor. If Kamala Harris would have become president, the United States would be burning. The United States would be burning. At some point, the United States would be burning. You know, we can't put ultra left liberals in the White House, or we have enough receipts that these ultra left people make bad decisions because they focus on the wrong things. They just focus on the wrong things. You know, they want to make everybody feel good. You can't govern that way.
Ace Nielsen is on the ground in Los Angeles.
Streets normally gridlocked with traffic are held clear for emergency workers, while entire neighbourhoods remain closed, those both at risk and those already hit. Many residents don't know if their homes are still standing.
It's my parents' house. They're 79 and 85, and my dad's sick, and he's asking about his house because he spent his entire life, you know, wanting to live by the sea or having a house by the sea.
We found Cindy Salcedo with her bike, trying to get around the roadblocks.
Trying to find out if our house is still standing. You can't get past Getty Villa. It's a hard stop.
Armed with an address and our press credentials, we made our way past the police checks on the Pacific Coast Highway, where house after house had burned to the ground. So many, in fact, it was hard to tell where her father's home was even supposed to be.
I'm going to send you a photo. I don't know if we have good news for you. So I'm sorry.
Okay, I understand. Any news is something I'm grateful. Thank you so much. It came in 20. Oh, yeah, 20. Yeah, I think you're in the right spot.
All right, can you imagine though, right? Really, your house is on fire and you are looking out at an endless supply of water that you can't use to protect or put the fire out in your house. I mean, it's just kind of amazing, right? At least when I'm looking at it, you had to retreat to the sea if you didn't evacuate in order not to get burned to death. Okay. So if you had a boat, maybe you could go out there, you know, but at night, it really looks ominous. But just think about it. You got miles and miles, endless amount of water, and not a drop to drink, right? Nah, not one. It's incredible.
Really sorry. I was hoping this would be a good news story.
I got information and now I know. No, but thank you. It's at least now I have a little bit of closure.
While those living in this city under siege want answers for why government authorities weren't better prepared.
Well, I want to know why we didn't have enough water for all the fire hydrants. Oh, of course. Of course. They cut the budget, of course. And like I say, I want to emphasize more than anything how amazing our firefighters are and the first responders. None of this is on them. We are immensely grateful for everything they did with the limited resources they had towards the end, because they have not, they went to every neighborhood that they could. And like I said, just the fact that they had the foresight to throw our flammables into our pool so that our house wouldn't ignite and that they put out the fire on our hedge, they were there at least. Do you know what I mean? They tried to do what they could, and we can never repay them for their heroism or what they've done for us. We just can't. But I think the town, everyone I'm talking to, most of the people in this hotel are evacuees, and they are angry and they want answers.
And answers are still difficult to come by as authorities were dealt with another blow. New fronts broke out, threatening new neighbourhoods. just as slower winds were supposed to give firefighters some reprieve.
What makes firefighting so difficult and dangerous in the canyons surrounding Los Angeles are tiny spot fires, just like the one you can see here. It is small, but has the potential to climb quickly up the mountainside. And we're just on the cusp of a highly populated area of Los Angeles that has already been evacuated. At the same time, firefighters are doing those water drops to try to put those small fires out. But as the wind picks up, as you can see it is now, it makes it more difficult for planes to drop that water. And in an instant, it can be out of control.
There's no end in sight to this catastrophe. Here in Santa Monica, there's an eerie calm, with many people who live here choosing to leave, even if just to escape the smoke, while the citizens of Los Angeles fight to survive another day.
All right, so we end that one there. I tell you, you know, it's just kind of a sad commentary about how the things go. Hey, Braxton, how you doing? Hey, Smitty's Corner, what's going on, man? Thanks for dropping by for a second. Braxton, what's going on? Listen, it's sad. I just wanted to, of course, I got a couple more videos because I like the people who are professional speakers to really speak, and you can hear what they're saying because they piece it together. So I had the daisy chain. We talked to the president. We saw the governor. We had a little bit of Karen Bass. And now we're going to talk a little bit about what conservatives and a lot of people who voted this year thought about the fact that we shouldn't be looking at identity politics and DEI over the people, what's best for the majority of the people, and how we live, who you sleep with, and how you want to go get down has nothing to do with how you should govern the United States. So I got a clip from my girl, Megyn Kelly. And actually, the chick is kind of funny. I never was a fan until I started checking out some of her content. But, you know, she's a snow bunny. But sometimes she's on point. So I'm going to go ahead and play what she has going on. And we're not the whole thing. So I just got a clip from here, just a few minutes worth.
But she's not even in the country. The LA Times reporting that firefighters have been radioing their stations with reports that the hydrants were dry in the Pacific Palisades. Firefighters couldn't get water. It makes it really tough to fight the fires, especially when the winds are so bad that you can't take the aircraft up to do it from overhead. The fire hydrants were dry, which was a risk they reportedly knew about, a problem the city reportedly knew about, but failed to fix. Real estate developer Rick Caruso, who ran against Karen Bass for mayor, he called himself a Dem, but it was pretty clear this guy was about as close as you could get to a Republican in California running for office, right? You have to say you're a Dem to win for Los Angeles and mayor. So he called himself a Dem, but he was an independent, basically. He was an outsider. And the way he talked sounded much more red than it did blue. And he lost. Elon Musk had endorsed him, but that union vote came in late in the game. And before he knew it, Karen Bass had pulled out a victory. So Rick Caruso went on local TV and raged about this fire hydrant issue. Take a listen.
They can't fight a fire without water and the resources that are needed. Everybody knew these winds were coming. The real issue to me is twofold. We've had decades to go remove the brush in these hills that spreads so quickly. And the second is you got to have water. And my understanding is the reservoir was not refilled in time and in a timely manner to keep the hydrants going. And it's all about leadership and management that we're seeing a failure of. And all of these residents are paying the ultimate price for that.
The LA Times reported that in November, right, we're beginning of January, in November, the lack of water from hydrants was also to blame for the difficult efforts combating the mountain fire in Ventura County. They have been aware that there's an issue with the water not being in the fire hydrants. And what did the LA mayor do to protect her citizens? Well, we'll get back to you when she gets back from Ghana and someone has the chance to ask her. As if all of this is not enough, it turns out that in recent years, LA's fire chief has made not filling the fire hydrants top priority, but diversity. Diversity is at least among the top priorities for the department. Her name is Kristen Crowley. She's been fire chief since 2022. And in an interview shortly after she was elevated to this position, she talked about being super inspired to make the fire department more diverse.
I'm super inspired.
She took time out of her already busy schedule to tell us about her vision for the department's future, one that includes a 3-year strategic plan to increase diversity.
People ask me, well, what number are you looking for? I say, I'm not looking for a number. It's never enough.
Out of 3,300 city firefighters, only 115 are women right now. When it comes to inclusivity and diversity at this department, she's a proud member of the LGBTQ community.
That just kind of opens the door. For people who thought, wow, I didn't even know that that was an opportunity for me.
Who gives a shit if the fire chief is gay? I'm sorry, but who gives a flying fig about who she likes to sleep with? Can you fight the fucking fires, madam? That's the relevant question. We don't care about your lady parts, and we don't care who you want having access to them. Can you fight fires? Can you make sure there's water in the fire hydrants when you realize in Ventura County, this is a massive problem? When you realize that California is going through a drought where they haven't had rain in weeks and months, I don't care who turns you on. And you know why they have only 100 women in a squad of 3,300? Because women tend to be smaller and not as strong. And unless you lower the requirements to become a firefighter, most women can't pass the test. Trust me when I tell you that someone my size cannot run into a building and rescue someone even Doug's size. Never mind an Arnold Schwarzenegger, who actually happens to live in LA or California at least. This is an absurdity. This is just like the Secret Service and what happened with Trump. We needed all these women in there who weren't even tall enough to protect the 6'3" president. Under this woman, Ms. Crowley, the department created a diversity, equity, and inclusion bureau to train firefighters not on refilling the hydrants or what to do when they're empty, but on the importance of DEI.
Our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Bureau, now we actually have the staff to do the work when it comes to doing a deep dive in regard to how we do business, how we take care of one another in the fire stations and in our work environment.
We don't care. We don't care about any of that. I don't give a shit about how you're taking care of somebody inside the firehouse. Take care of me in my home and my kids and my animals when the fires hit. That's your real job, madam. You know how much my family and I love our dogs. Yes, even Strudwick. He was so sweet on our vacation. I can't
And thank you. Yeah, I was speaking. Thank you, man. I forgot to take my thing off. Yeah, there's no big deal. I was just saying again that the probability of the chick being better than all those men is very, very, very low. So anyway, yeah. So we got a little dead spot in there, but that's okay. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I'm looking at this thing. I'm not even looking at it. Whatever. So we got one more thing where we're going to look at the fire chief, and she's going to kind of take some responsibility, but she's going to be throwing the mayor under the bus as she does it. You know? All right. Here we go.
We spoke today with Los Angeles Fire Chief Kristen Crowley, who's in charge of the department's more than 3,200 uniformed personnel. We began by asking her how they're doing.
They're resilient. They're putting everything into this. I can guarantee you that. I'm extremely proud of their dedication and commitment to this mission. They're doing everything in their power to save lives and protect property.
I must ask you, because a lot of people are talking about the warning that you sent last month that the budget cuts have, quote, severely limited the department's capacity to prepare for, train for, and respond to large-scale emergencies, including wildfires. You sent that warning about these budget cuts. Was this preventable?
I tell you, from the budget cut side of things, when there's a $17 million cut in our budget operating costs, immediately from that point, I had to make some tough decisions. I looked at some other duties and responsibilities that we do as a fire department and had to focus right back on the training of our firefighters and also our ability to respond to the everyday fires and EMS response.
Would that $17 million that had been cut from your budget have made a difference in this fight?
I would say with the lean forward posture that we took, knowing that a $17 million cut we had to take from somewhere, and that was from the non-essential duties and responsibilities that as a fire department we have taken on over the past many, many years.
But with all due respect, in December you had warned that the budget cuts would severely limit your ability to respond to large-scale emergencies. Is that true or not?
Yes, so I would say yes, we were limited to a certain factor, yes.
And let me ask you about how that limited your response, because in the early hours of the wildfires, especially in the Pacific Palisades, we had a team on the ground, a crew there with our reporter, and witnessed number of homes burned to the ground, and there was not a fire truck in sight. How did that happen?
We pre-deployed the most amount of emergency resources that we could with what we had. With the pre-deployment, when the fire takes off, we're going to push as many resources that we can at that particular incident. And that's what we did. We did exactly what we could with what we had.
Just so you're saying you didn't have enough resources?
I would say in a win event like this that we are living today in day 3, something that is as significant as this particular fire, I would say we threw exactly what we could with what we had. So if I had 1,000 engines to throw at this fire, I honestly don't think 1,000 engines at that very moment could have tapped this fire down.
Chief Crowley, thank you so much for your time, and we're thinking of you and all the firefighters.
I want to make sure the community knows our firefighters are absolutely doing everything that we can, and I'm certainly proud of how hard and dedicated they are.
Well, you know what? Nobody really has an issue with the firefighters themselves. The truth of the matter is, if you have a limited budget and you know it got cut, how much did it cost for you to stand up that DEI organization that you stood up? Now, how much of the budget did it cost to have firemen sitting in a stupid classroom talking about DEI and diversity and all that horse shit that doesn't matter in terms of how you put out a fire? How much did that cost? Could that money have been better served? Might not have been $17-18 million, but I would imagine it was part of the budget. You had to pay for it. You had to pay for the teacher and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. I dropped the link for anybody who wanted to come up because this is I got one more video after this, just to say goodbye. But I just wanted to kind of chronicle, the people who were involved, why California's in the position they have. They have private enterprises controlling water, right? There was a person who said that water that was coming from the north that got diverted into the sea it comes down to central California and not necessarily Southern California, but that water came from all the way up in Canada. It flows from north to south. So if they would have tributaries and canals and all the kind of things that make water flow, it would eventually reach down to LA and probably keep going unless man stopped it by dams and all this other horse shit that we use. So yeah, that water would have been beneficial, even if you get your water from a different source, right? So, but I can't understand how you would divert millions of gallons of fresh water out into the Pacific Ocean as if it needs more water from you, where people could use it because on the benefit of a fish, and then for the benefit of a private company owned by billionaires who control who gets water and what, and making the taxpayers pay double and triple for the water. I mean, California is a mess. Now, I guess if we peel back the onion in every state, we'll find something horrendous that the politicians have done to enrich themselves and screw the American taxpayer. You know what I'm saying? We saw at this last election that the American people decided that we had enough of one party screwing us. And now, Donald Trump, you're back on the clock. You're selling a lot of wolf tickets. How you govern and what difference you're going to make, I might satisfy me, because if we stop talking about all the DEI and the transgenders and we can stop them mutilating children, I'm all for that. And stop the open borders and all that ultra liberal bullshit that's going on. I'm you got a check mark in the box for me, but you still have more to do. So with that, I don't think anybody's going to come up. So this is going to be a short thing. I know that a lot of people are talking about California, but I wanted to hit it from my little perspective, and let's take a look at some of the players. Look at what California is doing with the water, and the fact that private enterprises own so much of it is a scary thought. I'm looking at this fire chief. Listen, she probably knows. There was some clips of her with some receipts on how often she went back to the mayor and everybody else saying, listen, we need more money, we need more resources, we need this, we need that. So she actually fought for her people. But as far as I'm concerned, I think if you have a workforce of 3,500 men and 100 women, a man should be the fire chief. I don't care what anybody tells me. I'll argue that statistically with you to the end. Unless you're telling me that all the men are complete idiots and they don't deserve to be chief. Right? And out of the 4% group, 96% of the men, are subservient to that. It's just horseshit to me. Anyway, listen, I have one more thing for you guys. And this is a short video. This is a short one. All right. So one more. Bear with me. And you know how I go out. We're gonna do a little ode to the firemen with a little song. And then with that, I'm gonna say good night to everybody.
In the heart of the city, when the sirens wail, the bravest of the brave will stand sail. With helmets on our heads and hearts full of pride, we rush into the flames, standing side by side with all the firefighters, strong and true. Running through the smoke, we'll rescue you. In the darkest nights, we'll light the way. With courage in our souls, we'll never sway. Through the crackling embers, we give a call. Saving lives is our mission. We'll give our all, the ladder to the holes. We're ready for the fight. With teamwork and with honor, we'll conquer the night. Hate all the firefighters, strong and true. Running through the smoke, we'll rescue you. In the darkest nights, we'll light the way. With courage in our souls, we'll never sway. When the flames are rising, we don't back down. When we stand together, united with our crowns. For every hero lost, we'll carry their flame. In our hearts forever, we honor their name. All the firefighters, strong and true. Running through the smoke, we'll rescue you. In the darkest nights, we'll light the way. With courage in our souls, we will never sway. So here's to the bravest, let the whole world see. In the face of danger, we'll always be free. With sound in our hearts and purpose in our hands. With a fire in the heart, united we stand.
And with that, good night to the chat. Thanks for staying and hanging out with me for the evening. And it's a great lineup on the week. Check the live link on BMU's channel. We got things going on every day. We got a new show coming up with Lit and Jay. That's Wednesday, I believe, Wednesday or Thursday. Whatever it looks like. So just check it out. Make sure you mark your notifications. And we'll see you later. Have a good night.